Welcome back to Keeping Tabs. This is the show where we are keeping it real about real estate, where we break down the real estate market, really one conversation at a time. I'm your co-host, Zach Viscomi, and obviously joining me today is Tabitha.
Hello, hello. How are you? Happy Friday. We're taping this on a Friday, so,
We are.
we
We
are
are.
ready for the weekend. The Eagles just, played yesterday.
That
I
was
don't know
fun.
if they won or lost because I went,
They beat the Cowboys the first game of the season. We'll date ourselves a little bit here, but
okay.
yeah, it's always good to call out the fact that we beat the Cowboys. So I think that's
And I'm
warranted.
hoping to win the lotto tomorrow. That's the other thing I'm hoping. Did you get your ticket?
I didn't. I
Yeah.
should.
Are you gonna get a ticket? I mean,
I
it's
didn't even realize it
$1.7
was
billion
high.
dollars.
Okay, then yes, I am on my way home.
Because you would be, you might win.
Why not? I mean, it's worth the investment. It's just a dollar or two, right? So,
And then we can buy whatever house and renovate whatever house we want.
good point. Well, that brings us right to it, right? So today, what we're talking about in the conversation that we're having is, should you renovate your home or is it time to relocate? So we're going to explore all the pros and cons of both of those, what you should consider financially, emotionally, and everything in between, and really what makes sense for you and or your family. So let's dive in.
Yeah, so I get this question a lot because the inventory has been so low, as we've spoken about in other episodes. We have a lot of buyers and sellers sitting in their current house and saying, okay, does it make sense to put and invest money into what I have? Can I make this house work for me because I'm sitting in it a lot longer than I want to be because of the lack of inventory, or should we really just move? And so I get this question very frequently with sellers who are just not necessarily finding what they want right this moment in the market. Interest rates are higher, so they might be sitting on a 3.5 interest rate in their current home. Today's interest rate is mid sixes. And, they're like, well, if I'm not really finding what's out there that I want, should I just invest the money into the current house that I have?
Yeah, which is a great question, right? I mean, that's the battle that we're in today, and what we're trying to face here. And what are the emotional and financial drivers behind these decisions? And so why don't we start with reasons why we should renovate, right? Like, let's jump into, you're already in your home. So what should you be doing? Why should you be doing it?
I think, for people that are in a location that they're very happy and comfortable with, and it's really the house itself that they're having issues with. So if they're enjoying the location, maybe they have children that are in the school district that they want to stay in, then and the house size is somewhat working for them, and maybe it's the layout that's an issue for them, maybe it's the dated kitchen, maybe it's the dated bathrooms. A lot of people, usually I find a lot of people when they're moving, they're always looking at kitchens and they're always looking at bathrooms. That's what sells houses, kitchens and bathrooms. So if it's really about opening up a wall and putting in their dream kitchen, that's something that's possible. But if it's about size of the property, that's when we really start to think about putting on an addition and the expense of that. And does the township allow that? All these different townships have different rules. So there's a lot to think about. And the rates, the other thing is, for myself, I just did a new deck. And when I went to look at HELOC rates, when I looked at what that would cost to pull out, even though I have a ton of equity in my house, the rate on that wasn't really great in today's market. So I had to really sit and think about whether I wanted to do that based on today's rate. So I ended up just waiting a little bit longer till I had more cash in hand so that I could just do it with money. But I think that, that's a big factor in if you have the cash on hand or if you have to pull it out from your house. I want to say when I looked at it, it was like 9%, which I just didn't want to do when I was sitting on a mortgage that's 3.5%. So, I decided not to do that, but some people might do that. And hopefully those rates will start to come back down. So I think that might be option for more people later when the rates come down to put more money into their house. So things like kitchens, and what the cost of a kitchen. I mean, That's, cost of a kitchen's expensive. I've seen them 50,000 easy peasy. I've seen them 100,000 easy peasy. It depends on what you like. So you have to factor in, is that making that investment in a kitchen, does that come back as a good investment when you go to sell it down the line? Most times it does. Kitchens hold value. Same with bathrooms. So those are all things to consider when you're deciding whether to really renovate or relocate.
So, in a similar vein, then, I mean, we're talking about the things that work: kitchen, bathrooms, renovating, and that. Adding a deck, I think, extra living space or entertaining space makes sense. But is there things that would have the opposite effect that wouldn't increase the value of your home? Like, this might be an extreme, but like putting in a pool, right? Because there's some people who just don't want a pool and the maintenance and everything else. And so, are there things that you might spend money on that actually decreases the value of your home as you're considering this stuff?
I personally don't think putting a pool in decreases it necessarily, though some people might argue that with me. I think that I have clients that will not look at houses with pools. Usually clients that have small children and there's a fear. Usually that's where that comes in. But I do think more times, especially if you put your house on the market in the summer, spring, and you open that pool, I do think it draws a lot of people in. Just the my God, I can have this nice pool. And a lot of people I find are spending a lot more time in their houses. I want to say that's more from a COVID standpoint of people I find all my friends and family, they just are really enjoying their home time more than they once did, whether or not we're all working from home some parts of the week. Having things like pools, I found lately have been more of a draw. However, the expense of a pool, I mean, I have a pool, I bought the house with a pool. I don't know that I would have invested what that pool costed when they put it in. I think the old owners put it in 20 years ago or something, and the costs were a lot different to put in a pool today. I don't know that I would personally invest in that because I don't think that would make the difference for a buyer in the neighborhood that I'm in. But if I'm going to live in this house for 10 years and I just want to enjoy it and swimming something I like, and I do have, if I have the money, then why not? I just don't know that putting on that much of expense. You'd really want to stay in your house probably for longer periods of time if you're going to make a pool expense of an in-ground pool and go for it. But I think kitchens, bathrooms, no brainer, because if you do go to sell it, you should make your money back on that investment.
So I guess there's really two pieces to this puzzle that I'm pulling out based on what you're saying. So if you're interested in selling, but the market just isn't right yet, then it may make sense to renovate to try to get either a better value for your home or to be better prepared for when it shifts. So that sounded like one. And then the other one was, it may just make sense for you to renovate and stay exactly where you are and not sell. Right? And so am I picking up on that correctly?
Yeah, and I think there's certain things with renovation that you should do regardless if you're going to stay or go potentially. So if you have a roof that's leaking, obviously if you're going to go sell your house, you don't want to sell it with a roof leaking. So you have to really make that investment, unfortunately, even if you're on the way out, because the next owners probably want a non-leaking roof. So things like that, new heating systems, like if your heating system is almost about to die, you should probably invest in a new one, even if you're planning on selling, because those are things that potential buyers are going to walk through the house and really expect. They're going to expect a working heating system. They're going to expect a good roof. They're going to expect working or operational windows. In this market that we've been in, sellers have been able to get away with less than perfect situations with windows and heating systems. And because of the lack of inventory, more buyers are assuming the responsibility of repairing those things. But if the market shifts, then those are things that are really expected. So you want to care for your house. You want to keep it at least operating in an efficient, proper manner. You want to make sure that there's not water coming into your house and things that are really not great. But the cosmetics of it, if it's just an old kitchen but it operates, then you have to decide, is this worth it? Do I need new floors? Sometimes people are just in a dated house and really lifting it up with new floors, like a luxury vinyl plank or and painting could make a world of difference to your surroundings, and it might make you feel more comfortable in your house. Like even smaller items that you might be like, okay, I can stay here a little bit longer because I got a new landscape. But if you are in a 2 bedroom and a 3 bedroom and you have 5 kids and you really have outgrown the space, then those are things that you might want to consider the relocation part of it if you're tapped out on space. And to really add additions, the cost of building right now, like even if you're looking at new construction, the cost of building new, getting proper permits, going through that whole lifestyle shakeup. Like if you're putting an addition in, can you live in the house while the addition's happening? Do you need short-term housing? So it really depends on what you need and what you want to guide you in what decision you make. But I think, and finding contractors, that's the other thing. A lot of complaints I get from clients is, who do you have for a contractor list? What's their availability? When can I get this done? I mean, I think I had to wait 6 months for my deck. So, good contractors might have long wait times. So do you want to wait that amount of time?
So how does somebody leverage you as their real estate agent when they're trying to make that decision? You just mentioned a client asking you about contractors. Like how, you think, "Oh, my real estate agent when I'm ready to sell." But it sounds like you're a lot more involved in this than maybe some might have
Yeah,
expect.
as a real estate professional, we have, list and list of people that we've used for certain things, right? And we've gone through where clients might be just using different contractors to get their house prepared to sell. Might be doing little things or putting in floors or putting in carpets or putting in some new windows. So most of us have gotten a big list of contractors that we have worked with in the past. Not to say, that they're always going to be available, or they're not, they might not always be. Who knows what they're going to charge? We don't know that. I always tell people, get 3 quotes at minimum. They can be so different. Like I got four or five quotes actually for my last project, all very, very different. So I always tell people, get quotes. Some contractors do offer financing. So some of the larger companies will offer financing on projects like decks and kitchens and things like that. The rates are normally higher, which is why I didn't do it. However, when I just finished my deck, the contractor that I'd gotten one of the contractors I'd gotten a quote for was like, "Oh, we have 0% financing now." I'm like, "Oh, I already got I already got my deck, but
Tell
that's
us that at
great."
the beginning.
So there are contractors out there that you can get 0% financing. When I did um, my siding a few years ago, had and it's this is one of those things where every time I drove up to my house, I had this aluminum brown 1970s siding that I just hated. My house was just brown, brown, and more brown, and it just bothered me every time. I would be like, oh, I didn't like it. It was functioning. It just was not very pretty. So a few years ago, we decided to invest in the siding. We went with, and that's the thing, you want to pick quality in some places to make the most return on your house. And I know that hardy plank is something that people usually like. So we went and we did the expense of putting that on the house. And now every time I drive up to my house, I am so happy. I'm like, it feels like what I wanted my house to look like in my dreams. So it was a good investment. But when I did that, they were offering 0% financing. So I was able to pay it off in whatever I did. Um, it's not too long term, but it definitely helps with big projects like that. You don't necessarily want or have the money sitting in a bank account, so at least it spreads it out. So sometimes you can find that, and if you need it, look out to see if companies are offering it.
And obviously, there's a number of different reasons here that we've talked about to renovate, from, customizing your home to your lifestyle and the things that you want to see and the things that you enjoy. We talked about like kind of having it build equity, right? And so how does somebody, and then we'll jump into the relocation stuff, but like how does somebody this like is there a time frame? Like if I'm looking to sell my house in the next year, does it make sense to go through all this trouble, or is time a consideration in this, obviously?
Well, I think, yeah, if you're going to sell your house in 1 year, regardless of you having a new kitchen or not a new kitchen, then maybe you don't make that investment. It depends on, I guess, what you currently are sitting on. Like, and it might be talking to your real estate professional and they look through the comps. The one thing is when we are discussing cost and what we think their house could sell for, and we're looking at the comparables, what we call comps in the market, and there's a range in that, and we see, okay, this house sold for this amount, but it looks like 1970s, which is fine, but that's what it is. And then we have this 1970s house that has new bathrooms, new kitchen, new flooring, and it sold for this. Where do you want to price your house at? If you're looking for more of this, the higher end price, then we can't be dated with the 1970s look. So if you're looking for that price, how much would it cost to look like that house? Because you'd want to weigh that out. So if it's going to cost $100,000 to look like that house that's $300,000 more, then maybe it makes sense to do it. But that's, a real estate professional can help you out with that if you're like even thinking about this, because then you can really look at what your current house looks like based on what is sold in the market and then make that determination. I mean, we can't as professionals tell you what something's going to cost. So that's, you're going to have to get, again, quotes, but weigh that all out and then see if it makes sense to make the investment.
Excellent. So let's talk about now the other half of this, right? We're talking about renovating, but what about relocating, and how does that play into this decision-making process?
I think, for the people that want to relocate that I'm hearing about in my suburb of Montgomery County, you have people that have, usually I'm hearing the people that have outgrown their house, and the cost of an addition would be so crazy that it wouldn't make sense for them to do it. So they need more space and they really don't feel like the cost is there to do it. They don't have enough equity to do something like that potentially, or interest rates would be too high to do it. So those people are wanting to relocate and they're just waiting for the house to come on the market. And then you have the downsizers, baby boomers that are still in these larger homes that want smaller. They don't want a huge yard to mow. They don't want to pay these higher taxes for this house that they don't use as much, but they don't know where they're going to go. So those people are also sitting back sort of waiting, what do we do? And waiting for the time for that something comes up that makes sense for them to do it. A lot of times we're seeing those houses, and maybe they haven't been updated. Maybe those are the ones that could use a renovation if they've been in their house for 40 years. You know, but they're still selling in the suburbs because, again, we don't have any inventory. So they could sell, but it's about where they're going to go. But usually the driving factor on people is wanting to relocate their life for downsizing purposes, for upsizing purposes, for moving. You have the people that are looking to retire into a different climate, and really just want a new scenery. We have all the people that go to the shore. We have all the people that go to Florida for weather reasons. So those are people that the relocation is what they want to do. They no longer want to be in the spot that they are.
Yeah, so a lot of it comes back to location, location, location. I mean, it seems like that really drives it. You talked about school districts and stuff too, being a big part of that.
Yeah, I think if you obviously if you have children, school districts play an important piece of it. People also, even if they don't have children, they're looking at it from a resale perspective, which they should. And so people will weigh that out of what school district they're buying into or they want to buy into. But location, I always warn people in the beginning, location, in my opinion, is the most important. Like, find yourself in a spot that's going to make your life convenient, that's going to have less time. Like, if you have to drive an hour back and forth, you know, to your house, to where you're going, is that the lifestyle you want? You burn a lot of time in your car commuting. So for me, it's like weighing out what's important to you in location wise and going off of that. And if that means a smaller house in that location, then I think you get a smaller house in that location, is my personal opinion, than to get a huge house in a location that's not convenient to your family, to your friends, to your lifestyle, to your work, just to have a big house. So I always try to have that conversation that I personally think location's most important, besides budget, obviously, because we all have to work in the budget unless we win that lotto. But
Get my
if
ticket.
we're dealing with money, right? Because money makes the factor, and location. I always say, you could your big house far out will get old after a certain amount of time. You probably would have regrets if you don't love the location.
So as we're talking about keeping tabs on real estate, and we're talking about keeping these conversations real too, in today's market, is it a buyer's market or is it a seller's market? And if I'm right now considering, should I renovate or relocate? Obviously there's all these other factors coming into play, but it sounds like the cost of renovations and some of these other things may be limiting. It sounds like people are looking for houses. And so just given where we are right now, what would you say by and large makes the most sense for somebody? Or can you even say that?
It's location. From it depends on what location we're talking about. I cover the Philadelphia and the suburbs of Philadelphia, which include Delaware County, Montgomery County, and Bucks County, and they all are going through experiencing a little bit different of a reality. Like in Montgomery County, I do still feel it's a seller's market, the low inventory. So in that sense, if you're in the location that you have and that you love, and you're happy with the actual location, and you have approximately the square footage in your house that's workable for you, then you might want to consider renovating. If you have the funds to do it. But those funds, again, in a suburbia house in Montgomery County, 4-bedroom, 2.5-bathroom, 2,500 square feet and up, I mean, it could be very costly to do some of these projects. So do you have that money on hand to do it? And for some people, they don't have 200,000 sitting in their bank account to make improvements. Most people do not. So, if you don't have it, do you have the equity? Are you going to pay 8% on it? So that will be the determining factor. But if money was no option, no problem, and no obstacle, then you might want to renovate. Places like Delaware County, I'm finding areas of Delaware County sort of starting to more balance into a buyer's and seller's market. I see some price reductions happening in that area more frequently. So those areas, they're balancing more. So you might want to relocate in those areas depending if the inventory is there. So it just depends. There's a lot to factor in, and calling up your agent to help guide you through this. Listen, the agent, of course, we would love for you to sell your house, right? Like, we want you to sell your house, but hopefully an honest agent would really walk you through it and say, listen, based on what you want, based on what you need, it might make sense to renovate.
Yeah, I think that's the key that I'm taking away from this so far. Is it's really hard to say a blanket statement as to whether or not you should renovate or relocate. There's so many factors that play into that, and it's really important to talk to somebody who understands those factors, can ask you the right questions and help you make the best decisions, which I didn't know, like, real estate agents could be a resource for that. And so I'm learning something even just sitting here and understanding, what it is that you do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. I think an honest real estate agent would have those frank conversations with you on on what makes sense. I mean, there's some people, I just had a closing the other day and I was asking the sellers, I was representing the buyer, I was asking the sellers where they were going. And they were specifically going to a new spot for a specific school. They were moving only because they wanted their kid in this school that's an hour away from where they're living, right? Like that was their drive, that they wanted to, they were happy in their house, they liked their house, they've made renovations along the way, but ultimately they decided to move specifically for their one child. So everybody has reasons. It might be you get a new job, you might want to relocate closer to work, then that's another reason why you would decide to relocate. Having us as part of that decision, or part of that conversation to help lead your way is nice to have extra support to help lead.
Yeah. Somebody who can tell you like, yeah, you can change the countertops, but you can't change your commute. So you got to decide which one you want.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I like that.
It's huge, or going to your grocery store that you like, like, do you want to drive an hour to your favorite grocery store or your gym? Me and Zach go to the same gym. So it's like, for me, I was like, I don't know that I would ever want to be anywhere else because I really like the proximity of everything I'm around right now. To me, that's important. So.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. So can you kind of summarize this here as we close out this episode and sort of draw it together for the audience as to, what's the key takeaway from this conversation so far and what you really want them to walk away?
I think, like anything, it's making decisions really with an open mind and really evaluating everything. A real estate transaction should not be rushed. It should be thought about. It should be planned. So factoring in everything that matters when it comes to buying and selling a home to make sure that you have no regrets on the other side of it. That would be my takeaway.
That's great. Well, I think what we continue to point out here is it's, again, important for you to work with somebody that you trust. And we've said it in other episodes as well. Like, don't just take it from us, right? Get others' opinions, but find a real estate agent and somebody that you can really trust because they are a valuable resource beyond just, being able to put your home on the MLS, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And like, I'll get calls like every other day. Hey, do you have an electrician? Do you have a plumber? Do you have, and I just send names out here. So do you have a junker? I'm preparing a house to, get 3 quotes. Always get 3 quotes to everything because you just don't know. But we are a resource, and we're more than just that transactional.
I'm going to start calling that Tab's rule of 3 because
I like that. Yeah.
It's just your rule of 3. 3 quotes, 3 opinions, 3, like, that's it. 3 houses. Let's go for it.
Yes. Well,
hit that lottery.
I wish that was happening more. That's not happening in this market.
That's great. Well, look, I think that kind of brings us to the end of our episode today of Keeping Tabs. And here's the truth. Whether you decide to renovate or relocate, the key is making the best choice that fits your family, your finances, your future. And if weighing those options are important to you, then obviously don't do it alone. You can reach out to Tabitha for that expert guidance. You can find her on tabithaheight.com, which we'll drop on here as well, and get your free consultation. So as always, thank you so much for listening. We will see you next time. Please like, subscribe, share, and we look forward to continuing to keep tabs and keeping it real on real estate.
Thanks, Zach.